Today we have another historic firearm from our upcoming August Premier Firearms Auction, a Henry lever action rifle. But this is not just any Henry lever action. As you can see from the get-go, it's a really nice example to begin with, but this one is also documented as coming out of the family of a Confederate cavalryman, and that cavalryman said he captured this particular Henry rifle during the Atlanta campaign from a Union sergeant. The Henry lever-action rifle was one of the most advanced firearms of the American Civil War. Most soldiers during the Civil War are still using single-shot muzzle-loading rifle muskets, whereas the Henry packs up to 16 rounds if you include one in the chamber and an absolutely stacked magazine. So that makes the Henry basically the assault rifle of the American Civil War. You have other repeating rifles like the Spencer, but the Spencer, while stronger and more powerful in terms of the cartridge, actually only held 7 shots and had to be manually cocked for every shot after running the lever, whereas the Henry, just like modern lever actions, you can just run the lever and keep firing, so you can fire off 16 shots really quick. Most people who have studied the American Civil War probably know that the Henry was widely used by Union soldiers during the conflict, but they were also used by the Confederacy when they get their hands on them. It was obviously more complicated for the Confederates to use Henrys because they would actually have to capture the ammunition as well in order to keep them in service, but the Henry was so desirable because of its rapid fire abilities that it was used by some specialized units in the Confederacy as well. This particular Henry rifle, serial number 4395, was manufactured right around February of 1864. You can see it's got some of the later features where it's only got a dovetail here and not on the frame for the rear sight, but it still has the earlier rounded heel on the butt plate here. But this rifle, while manufactured relatively late in the war, was only in Union hands for a short period of time. It was captured during the Atlanta campaign, and then it remained in the family of a Confederate soldier all the way up until around 1980. Dr. George O. Brosnahan was the Confederate soldier who captured the rifle, and then he passed it down to his great-nephew, who was the one who actually sold it in 1980. Both of them are buried in the same graveyard in Pensacola, Florida. Brosnahan captured this rifle from a wounded Union sergeant named Kendall outside Atlanta, and actually promised Sergeant Kendall that if he survived the war, he would actually return this Henry back to him. Brosnahan then used this rifle for the duration of the war in his own service. Included research shows that Brosnahan served in Company H, the Prattville Dragoons, in the 3rd Alabama Cavalry, which was heavily engaged during the Atlanta campaign. Midwestern units are widely known to have used Henry rifles late in the war, including the 64th Illinois Infantry Yates sharpshooters engaged in the Atlanta campaign. One of their sergeants, Clifton Kendall, was wounded outside of Atlanta during the Atlanta campaign, taken prisoner, and then hauled off to the dreaded Andersonville prison, where he became sick. He was then transferred to a hospital where he died. So that would explain why this rifle remained with Dr. Brosnahan after the war. He had promised he'd return it if the Union officer had survived the war, but he didn't. He died in a Southern hospital like so many other Union soldiers did. We've covered that the Henry lever action rifle was one of the most advanced firearms of the American Civil War. We've talked about how these rifles were used by the Union and the Confederacy during the Civil War. So rarely do we get an opportunity to look at a Henry that can be documented as used by both sides, let alone in such a historic campaign like the Atlanta campaign. One of the cool features on this particular Henry is that we know it stayed in the family all the way until around 1980. And the grandnephew that had the rifle for many years, I believe he got it in the early 20th century from his great uncle directly. And if you take a look at the rifle, you can see that right here on the barrel, there's a filled added dovetail. He said that his great uncle had moved the sight forward at one point, and then he decided to move it back to the original point while he was still using it. So maybe his eyes got older and he needed to adjust the sight radius. So that's just kind of part of this gun's unique history of being owned first by a Union soldier and then by a Confederate soldier who kept using this gun obviously after the war as well. And yet, despite all that use, despite battlefield use, this Henry remains in really, really nice shape. If you take a look at the barrel, it's a very even, smooth, mellow brown patina, almost just like the blue is just kind of aged off the gun. The markings, like the Henry patent marking right here on top and the serial number, are nice and crisp. And then one of my favorite things on these Henry rifles is when you take a look at the brass gunmetal frames and furniture, they age perfectly if they're just left alone. So if you take a look at this one, it's got a really attractive, just mellow, aged patina that basically looks untouched. It looks like this gun has just been left alone for generations, and it survived this way all the way till today, and now it's available for sale. So it's something you can own and add to your collection. And I can't think of a better Henry from the Civil War to really add to your collection than this one. It's got the history on both sides of the conflict. It's got condition, it's documented, and it's just a beautiful example of a Henry lever-action rifle. This historic Henry lever-action rifle, attributed as used by both sides during the American Civil War during the Atlantic Campaign, is one of a large number of historic American firearms from the Civil War and beyond in our upcoming August Premier Firearms Auction. And this is your opportunity to add this piece of history to your collection, and it is definitely, one for the history books. This is a beautiful Henry in and of itself, but one with the amount of history we rarely get to see.